Tiffany Henyard's political empire crumbles amid scandal, public backlash, and defeat. Tiffany Henyard's once dominant political career in Dalton, Illinois, and Thornton Township is unraveling rapidly under the weight of scandal, public backlash, and decisive defeat in the Democratic caucus. Long known for consolidating power through her dual roles as Dalton mayor and Thornton Township supervisor, Henyard now faces what appears to be the end of her political influence. The final blow came when she was denied a spot on the Democratic ticket for re-election as township supervisor, a development that left her visibly stunned and unprepared. The pivotal moment unfolded during a historic Democratic caucus in Homewood, Illinois, orchestrated by State Senator Napoleon Harris. It was the first event of its kind in the township in decades and quickly turned chaotic. The venue's 600-person capacity left many of Henyard's supporters, some allegedly using township resources to boost her campaign, locked out when her team arrived late. With the doors shut and tensions high, what began as a logistical debacle spiraled into a crushing political defeat. The caucus itself lasted just 7 minutes. Harris and his slate swept the nominations with little resistance, marking a seismic shift in Thornton Township politics. Inside, cheers erupted. Outside, Henyard fumed, shouting accusations of foul play and claiming the meeting was illegal. She appeared desperate and unhinged. "You didn't run any of this the right way," she cried, her voice trembling with disbelief. But her outburst did little to change the outcome, or the perception that her power had finally slipped beyond recovery, now left with the long-shot option of running a write-in campaign. Henyard's path forward looks bleak. Legal battles are beginning to brew, and her already strained relationships with Dalton's village trustees are rapidly deteriorating. Public meetings have become stages for clashing egos, finger-pointing, and deepening dysfunction. Henyard's camp points to 2 prior caucus-related meetings they claim were improperly conducted, yet Harris's team have fulfilled all legal requirements, undercutting any claims of voter suppression or rule-breaking. The accusations rang hollow, especially given Henyard's own track record of procedural manipulation when it suited her. Her tenure has long been dogged by controversy, lavish and questionable spending of township funds, allegations of cronyism, and a pattern of using public office for personal and political gain have deeply eroded public trust. Many residents, once silent, are now vocal in their criticism. "She's done nothing but embarrass this community. It's time for her to go," one resident said bluntly, echoing the growing sentiment across Dalton and Thornton Township. Henyard's response to her caucus defeat has only intensified public frustration. Her reaction, marked by defiance, blame-shifting, and disbelief, underscored her disconnection from a community that has grown weary of her leadership. What she once framed as strength is now viewed as stubborn arrogance. Instead of introspection or accountability, Henyard stormed out of the Homewood auditorium, flanked by a shrinking circle of loyalists, stunned by what had just occurred. Her dramatic exit was symbolic. A former political powerhouse reduced a little more than a bystander in her own unraveling. While Henyard claimed she was wronged, the facts told a different story. She had simply failed to meet the basic legal requirements to qualify for the ballot. The fallout wasn't sabotage, it was accountability. The community she once dominated through force of personality and political maneuvering had turned against her, demanding change and rejecting the politics of intimidation and self-interest. Observers see her fall as long overdue. Her collapse felt like karma, justice, and action, one attendee said. It was a reckoning brought on by years of arrogance, excessive spending, and a complete disregard for the public trust. Henyard's ability to control both village and township government had once made her virtually untouchable. But power unchecked eventually invites scrutiny, and scrutiny has revealed a troubling pattern of behavior that many say disqualifies her from further public service. The most damning critiques center around her financial conduct. Residents were especially outraged by her use of taxpayer money for what many saw as self-serving expenses. Henyard's promises of transparency and ethical leadership, once central to her appeal, now ring hollow. Public satisfaction gave way to disillusionment, which quickly turned into outrage. As the scandals piled up, her grip on the community loosened, until it broke completely at the caucus. The event where Napoleon Harris's slate secured the Democratic nomination in just minutes was not only a practical defeat for Henyard. It was symbolic. It revealed the hollowness of her political infrastructure, which relied more on control and image than genuine public engagement or grassroots support. She hadn't built a movement. She had built a machine, and when that machine failed, there was little left to hold her position in place. As legal battles escalate and public meetings continue to spotlight dysfunction, Henyard's political capital has all but vanished. Her presence, once commanding, is now marked by desperation and denial. The April election is expected to seal the transfer of power to Harris's team, signaling not just a change in leadership, but complete repudiation of Henyard's era. Henyard's refusal to accept the legitimacy of her defeat has only widened the divide between her and the community. Her loyal base is shrinking, and even some of her former allies are distancing themselves. What was once viewed as political savvy is now seen as manipulation. Her insistence on clinging to power, despite mounting evidence of failure and widespread public disapproval, has cemented her legacy not as a trailblazer, but as a cautionary tale in the end. The residents of Dalton and Thornton Township made their decision, not just in a single caucus, but through years of voicing frustrations that Henyard refused to hear. The political reckoning was swift and final. The scandal, the spending, the disregard for process, all of it culminated in her dramatic downfall. Henyard's story, once marked by ambition and influence, now serves as a sobering example of what happens when leaders place self-interest above service. Her fall from grace is no longer a matter of speculation. It is a harsh and undeniable reality. The community that once watched in silence has spoken clearly, and its message is unmistakable. The era of Tiffany Henyard is over. Tiffany Henyard's political collapse, a legacy of scandal, power struggles, and public betrayal, once a rising force in local politics. Tiffany Henyard's grip on power in Dalton and Thornton Township is slipping away under a tidal wave of scandals, legal challenges, and public outrage. Though a small inner circle of loyalists clings to the hope of her political resurgence, the damage to her image appears beyond repair. Her fall serves as a stark warning, a cautionary tale of unchecked power, public betrayal, and the irreversible consequences of lost trust. The community's message has become unmistakably clear. Henyard's time is over. Her refusal to bow out gracefully has only intensified the spectacle of her downfall, reinforcing perception of a leader increasingly out of touch with those she was elected to serve. Once hailed for her ambition, she is now remembered for the dysfunction that defined her reign. Her tenure has been marked by a long string of controversies, lavish spending, combative leadership, and a disregard for ethical and fiscal responsibility. Public outrage reached a boiling point when investigations revealed extravagant misuse of taxpayer dollars. Reports uncovered first-class flights, luxury hotels, fine dining, and most infamously, a $33,000 Amazon shopping spree in a single day. All while the township faced pressing economic challenge, the extravagance didn't end there. Henyard's personal financial missteps also came to light, including a landlord filing eviction papers against her for unpaid rent. These incidents painted a troubling picture of fiscal irresponsibility that extended beyond a public office and into her personal life, further fueling public disillusionment. But it wasn't just the spending that eroded confidence. It was how she governed. Henyard's style was described by many as domineering and authoritarian. She was known to silence dissent during public meetings and consolidate power in ways that stifled collaboration and fostered fear. Critics, including former colleagues, labeled her leadership as toxic. One even claimed it created a culture of retaliation, where questioning the status quo came with consequences. These behaviors gradually alienated not just political peers, but also the very residents who once supported her. Legal battles mounted alongside public outrage, amplifying calls for transparency and accountability. What was once seen as a promising political career degenerated into a national embarrassment for a township desperately in need of steady, responsible leadership. The final tipping point came at the Democratic caucus in Homewood, a historic event that marked the unraveling of Henyard's political stronghold. State Senator Napoleon Harris led a competing slate that swept the nominations in just 7 minutes. Many of Henyard's supporters, some transported on township-funded buses, were left outside after arriving late, locked out due to the venue's capacity. The disorganized, chaotic scene symbolized the very dysfunction critics had come to associate with her administration inside. The caucus concluded swiftly and decisively. When the results were announced, cheers erupted from the crowd. Henyard, visibly shaken, lashed out at Harris, accusing him of running an illegal meeting. "You didn't run any of this the right way," she shouted, her voice tinged with panic. But the damage was done. She was officially off the Democratic ticket for township supervisor, a stunning defeat that left her with little more than the remote possibility of a write-in campaign rather than concede or take responsibility. Henyard doubled down, vowing to remain mayor and fight on. But her influence was fading fast. Public trust had all but vanished, and legal investigations continued to tighten around her. Reports surfaced that the FBI had expanded its inquiry into her financial dealings, putting her and several close allies under greater scrutiny. One particularly damaging development involved a high-ranking police officer in her inner circle who was indicted for bankruptcy fraud. These revelations deepened the crisis and fueled new demands for her resignation. Residents had had enough. The list of grievances grew longer. Lavish spending, legal misconduct, authoritarian leadership, misuse of township resources, and growing ethical concerns. Among the most damaging blows was a scrutiny surrounding her nonprofit, the Tiffany Henyard Cares Foundation. Questions about transparency mounted as it failed to disclose how it spent public donations. The Illinois Attorney General's office eventually intervened, ordering the foundation to cease all fundraising until complied with state regulations, further tarnishing Henyard's public image and reinforcing perception that she used every institution within her reach for personal or political gain. The misuse of public resources also extended to the caucus. Township-funded buses were used to ferry supporters to the event in Homewood, a move critics decried as unethical and exploitative. The resulting chaos, as her supporters were turned away, symbolized the unraveling of her once formidable political machine. Despite the mountain of evidence, Henyard remained defiantly in office, her unwillingness to step aside. Despite a humiliating electoral loss, a collapsing support base, and expanding legal probes, was seen by many as a final insult to a community that had endured years of mismanagement and scandal. What had once been a seat of influence and prestige became, under Henyard's leadership, a source of dysfunction and embarrassment. Her name, once synonymous with political clout, had become a symbol of broken governance and betrayed public trust. The chaos she left behind fractured the community's faith in its institutions and ignited a call for systemic reform. The upcoming leadership transition, now led by Napoleon Harris and his team, offers hope for renewal. Residents look forward to a future rooted in transparency, service, and accountability, values that had long been overshadowed under Henyard's leadership. Her fall from grace is now complete, her political legacy forever tied to excess, controversy, and relentless disregard for the very people she once claimed to serve. Henyard's story is no longer one of ambition or power. It's a stark reminder of the dangers of ego-driven governance. Her collapse, once unthinkable, is now a defining chapter in the political history of Dalton and Thornton Township. And as the community turns a page, Henyard's name will stand not as a mark of leadership, but as a warning of what happens when leaders forget who they were elected to serve. Tiffany Henyard's fall from power, scandal, accountability, and a community's reckoning. The political career of Tiffany Henyard, once a formidable figure in Dalton and Thornton Township, has collapsed under the weight of scandal, corruption, and a profound erosion of public trust. A leader once associated with ambition and control now finds herself at the center of an explosive reckoning, with residents demanding accountability and justice after years of what they view as mismanagement, abuse of power, and disregard for ethical governance. Henyard's fall has been anything but quiet. Her refusal to step down, despite mounting investigations, lawsuits, and humiliating defeat at a historic Democratic caucus, has only amplified public outrage. Once silenced or ignored, the people of Dalton and Thornton Township are now speaking with unified voice, declaring that her time is up. The dramatic turning point came at the January 2025 Democratic caucus in Homewood, Illinois, orchestrated by State Senator Napoleon Harris. It was the first of its kind in decades, and it dealt Henyard a stunning political blow. Harris and his slate swept all nominations in just 7 minutes, effectively denying Henyard a spot on the ballot for township supervisor. The event, chaotic and contentious, saw many of Henyard's supporters transported on taxpayer-funded buses, locked out due to venue capacity limits. The disorganization symbolized the dysfunction that had plagued her administration. As the results were announced, cheers filled the auditorium while Henyard, visibly shaken, lashed out at Harris, accusing him of running an illegal meeting. Her cries of voter suppression and rule-breaking were quickly dismissed. Legal observers confirmed the caucus met all requirements, and Henyard's accusations rang hollow, especially given her own history of manipulating processes to her advantage. Her refusal to accept the results, declaring defiantly, "The show will go on," in a press conference, only deepened the sense of disconnect between Henyard and the reality she faced. Social media erupted in frustration. Just because she gets a Tiffany doesn't mean her goons shouldn't be indicted and prosecuted. One commenter wrote, echoing a widespread sentiment that Henyard's inner circle, too, should face consequences. The scandals surrounding Henyard were already numerous and damning. Reports of excessive spending drew widespread ire. First-class flights, luxury accommodations, high-end dining, and even a $33,000 Amazon shopping spree, all funded by taxpayer dollars. These revelations struck a particularly bitter chord in a township grappling with real economic challenges, adding insult to injury. Henyard was sued for unpaid rent, exposing a troubling pattern of fiscal irresponsibility in her personal life as well. Critics argued her actions showed a blatant disregard for ethical leadership. She leveraged public resources for personal and political gain, and her leadership style, described by many as authoritarian, alienated allies and residents alike. Residents who had once been silent began speaking out forcefully. "You don't even have the sense to look us in the eye. You'd rather just steal our money and do what you want, one resident said during a heated public meeting. This raw expression of betrayal reflected the broader public sentiment. Henyard had abused the trust placed in her, and now the community was demanding justice. Even her own allies appeared shaken. Keith Price, a longtime supporter, attempted to stay optimistic, suggesting voters could still write in her name on the ballot. But his tone lacked conviction, and few believed such a strategy could overcome the tidal wave of opposition she now faced. Meanwhile, Senator Napoleon Harris emerged as the symbol of change. A former NFL player turned businessman and legislator, Harris's clean break from Henyard's embattled legacy energized the electorate. His platform, built on transparency, accountability, and ethical leadership, offered voters a chance to turn the page on a painful chapter in local governance. The contrast between the two could not have been clearer. Harris speaking of healing and reform, while Henyard doubled down amid investigations and legal chaos. With each passing day, her grip on power weakened. Federal investigations intensified, including FBI scrutiny of her financial dealings and misuse of public funds. One of her close associates, a high-ranking police officer, was indicted for bankruptcy fraud. Further compounding the crisis, her nonprofit, the Tiffany Henyard Cares Foundation, also came under fire. Failing to disclose how it used public donations, the foundation was ordered by the Illinois Attorney General's office to cease all fundraising activities until it complied with regulations. This added another layer of suspicion to her growing list of legal and ethical challenges. The community's response was swift and unforgiving. Outrage flooded social media and public forums. Tiffany often just shouts over people in meetings. Now she's the one getting shouted down, one resident noted, encapsulating the poetic justice many felt. Others acknowledged the long-term impact of her reign. We're going to be cleaning up her mess for a long time, but at least now we have a chance to move forward. A taxpayer said despite the mounting controversies, Henyard made a last-ditch effort to hold on to relevance. In a recent Facebook post, she announced plans to seek re-election, but instead of generating momentum, it became a symbol of her political delusion, a refusal to acknowledge that her career was nearing its end. The announcement was met with derision and disbelief, with many questioning whether she would continue pouring taxpayer resources into futile legal battles or finally accept the damage done and step aside. Residents are clear in their demands: transparency, accountability, and a complete break from the dysfunction of Henyard's administration. For them, this is more than just a political shift. It's a long overdue reckoning. As Harris prepares for the April election, optimism mingles with cautious realism. Rebuilding trust in local government will not be easy. Years of controversy have left behind a fractured community, disillusioned by broken promises and drained by scandal. Harris and his team face a monumental challenge, not only to fix the systemic issues Henyard left behind, but to restore hope in an electorate weary of politics. As usual still, the energy for change is palpable. The people of Dalton and Thornton Township are no longer willing to tolerate corruption disguised as leadership. They are demanding a new chapter, one rooted in service, not self-interest. Whether Henyard will acknowledge the depth of the crisis and step down remains uncertain. Her increasingly isolated position, crumbling support, and spiraling legal woes suggest a dramatic and inevitable end. But even now, she continues to fight, clinging to a political structure that no longer holds her up. The community, however, has made its decision. The Democratic caucus was just the beginning. It marked not only Henyard's exclusion from the ballot, but also the symbolic rejection of the leadership she represented. Her reign, once defined by ambition and control, is now remembered for scandal, hubris, and betrayal. As history records the end of Tiffany Henyard's turbulent time in office, it will do so not as a story of triumph, but as a lesson in accountability, a reminder of what happens when power is abused and trust is broken. The people of Dalton and Thornton Township have spoken. They are ready to rebuild. They are ready to move forward, and above all, they are ready to leave this chapter behind.